First, I acknowledge we are gathered on the lands of the Wurundjeri Nation of the Woiwurrung language group in the Kulin Alliance. They occupied the Birrarung, Yarra Valley, before British colonisation of the area around the present location of Melbourne. I am giving this talk on stolen unceded lands. The Posthuman, written by Nicholas Gane. Nicholas Gane is a professor of sociology with an interest in social and cultural theories and the history of neoliberalism. In his encyclopedia entry to Problematizing Global Knowledge Civilization, Nicholas Gane argues that posthumanism is one of the most important concepts in contemporary cultural thought, including literary theory, science studies, political philosophy, the sociology of the body, cultural and film studies, and even art theory. This opening lists a wide range of academic disciplines. He demonstrates the extensive relevance by drawing from theorists across many of these different areas throughout his text, proving his point. He claims that, while some trace the term back to the cybernetic moment of the 1940s, our contemporary understanding of the concept started with Donna Haraway's 1991 article, Simians, Cyborgs, and Women, the Reinvention of Nature. He writes that even though she doesn't use the word posthuman, she does identify three boundaries that are no longer secure, which support posthuman theory. These boundaries are between humans and animals and humans and machines, and finally the physical and the non-physical. According to Catherine Waldby, posthuman is the loose umbrella term containing the recent set of ideas that attempt to reconceptualize the relationship between the rapidly transforming field of technology and the conditions of human embodiment. In other words, the term is broad and may be interpreted in a lot of different ways. Gane acknowledges this, but in a different way. He identifies the posthuman as a condition of uncertainty. In our age of high technology, the human body is no longer limited to nature due to our ability to modify our bodies. This raises questions as to what a human being is, which leads to the concept of the posthuman. To understand the concept of posthumanism, it is worth just stating what humanism is. Humanism is the idea that humans are at the center of the universe and the epitome of all life forms. What the posthuman concept does is break down that idea that the human is at the center of the universe, but also that a human is purely human and nothing else. The posthuman condition allows for the blurring of lines between human, machine, and animal. This leads to the key point of the posthuman, which is about transversalism, or the crossing of lines and boundaries. Transversal in mathematics means spaces that can intersect. Transversalism refers to this blurring between human, animal, and machine. I don't know why he didn't just use a Venn diagram, but whatever. Basically, the posthuman is not about progress of the human in its evolutionary sense, as it is commonly misinterpreted, including by myself. It is, in actual fact, about hybridity. Again, I feel I would have understood that initially if a Venn diagram was used, but maybe I just have an unhealthy obsession with Venn diagrams. The idea of hybridity has its roots in the cybernetic movements of the 1940s. An example of cybernetic thought of the overlapping of human and machine behavior can be seen in Claude Shannon's juggling robot. A highly intellectual invention indeed. Just look at that thing. The contemporary concept of the posthuman can be traced to Donna Haraway's 1980s and 1990s writings about cyborgs. As mentioned, Haraway calls into question three key boundaries that preserve the sanctity or separation between humans, technology, and animals. A cyborg is a person whose physical abilities are extended beyond their physical limitations by mechanical elements built into their body. The cyborg crosses the boundaries between organic life and machine. Gane concludes that the value of the concept of the posthuman really lies in the possibility of rethinking what we call human values, human rights, and human dignity against the backdrop of fast developing biotechnologies. Other key interpretations in the text come from Catherine Hale's The Literary Critic. Gane juxtaposes Claude Shannon and Warren Weaver's earlier works that talk about information as a bodiless form with Catherine Hale's critique of this thinking. Hales observes that bodiless information creates separations between information and matter, and the mind and body. This is problematic for Hales, who claims that the body is crucial for the existence of the mind and that information always has a physical form. As she puts it, To exist, information has to always be instantiated in a medium. Another key thinker in the work is Fukuyama, who is a political scientist who argues that humans have settled on liberal democracy as the final form of government. Fukuyama has called on the government to regulate biotechnological advancement as it poses a threat to human nature. He has argued that if technology can change the nature of humans, it will prevent the stable continuity to our experience as a species, which will dismantle the constitutional right of natural human equality, which he suggests is an empirical fact and underpins liberal democracy. Fukuyama claims that a stable human essence is found in the uniqueness of human language, consciousness, and emotions. Gane refutes Fukuyama's claims about the stability of human nature. He suggests that human nature isn't pure or stable because we are transversal beings, being multiple things at once, crossing lines between the machine and the human or animal, etc. As he writes, the purity of human nature gives way to new forms of creative evolution that refuse to keep different species or even machines and humans apart. Gane also goes on to dispute Fukuyama's claim about liberal democracy by pointing out that while Fukuyama describes the human experience of life today as free, equal, prosperous, caring, and compassionate, he is turning a blind eye to the fact that the world is not an equal experience for all people due to global capitalism. Gane then presents Catherine Hale's alternative criticism of Fukuyama by asserting his ideas that humans are special because they have human nature is tautological and a false separation of human nature and technology, as a part of being human is using technology, as it has co-evolved with us. Hence, Hale sees no separation between the human and the technology it uses. In fact, Hales writes, rather than the human being the measure of all things, as the Greeks thought, increasingly the computer is taken as the measure of all things, including humans. Gane's text is an encyclopedia entry in which he aims to present the debates and key interpretations of the concept. As a historian of ideas such as neoliberalism, Gane traces the roots of posthumanism through the history of the idea. He demonstrates the extensive relevance by drawing from theorists across many of these different areas, proving his point that it is one of the most important concepts in today's academic thinking. He compares, contrasts, and refutes the various ideas and critiques of the posthuman, and he reveals the metaphoric connection between the body and information. Gane concludes the value of the concept of the posthuman really lies in the possibility of rethinking what we call human values, human rights, and human dignity against the backdrop of fast-developing biotechnologies that open both the idea and the body of the human to reinvention and potential redesign. He takes a positive view of the posthuman as a concept and the possibilities that it describes. However, Gane doesn't look at posthumanism from the perspective of critical race studies. For example, in a panel discussion held at Columbia University's graduate school, participants noted that non-white, less privileged, powerful, female, older, indigenous people with disabilities, and so on, have not been historically included in the category of the human in the first place. The idea of the posthuman could be considered exclusive to a white privileged perspective of what the human is, and so may not always be productive. Gane also mainly looks at the human and machine barrier, but glosses over and doesn't really cover much of the human and animal barrier. In conclusion, Gane's text traces the history and context of the posthuman. Gane demonstrates its relevance across different academic disciplines. Finally, Gane compares and contrasts different perspectives of the concept. He does not critique from a critical race perspective. He has an overall positive perspective on posthumanism.